Let's talk about how to build bar chords when the root of the chord lives on the A string. We're going to pick a D flat just to be consistent. So find a D flat on your A string. If you remember the dot trick, G, A, B, C, D on the A string, it's a C, D. So there's D, E flat. Okay? So you put your first finger down to play the root note, and then again, you play the sidekick, just like in a power chord. So you have those two notes. You'll notice that my index finger is reaching up and muting the low E string by making contact with it. So you get a thud, 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 thud. So that the lowest note we hear in the chord is the root note, which is the way it's supposed to be. Every single one of these chords I'm going to show you whose root lives on the A string shares those same two notes in common. Very similar to what we did on the low E string. All the notes that follow after, though, is what determines the shape of major versus minor versus seven versus etc. We've got these two notes in common. Instead of showing you first what the major shape looks like, I want to show you the minor shape, because it's really similar to something you've already done. So we're going to show you how to play a D flat minor chord. C sharp or D flat, there it is right there. And then the shape is going to look like this. Now you remember, I'm muting the string here. The A string, we got the 4th fret with our index finger or first finger. D string, 6th fret, 3rd finger. G string, 6th fret, 4th finger. B string, 5th fret, 2nd finger. High E string, barred, 1st finger. That's a C sharp or D flat minor chord. Now the reason that D flat chord might look familiar is because it's essentially the same fingered shape. Your hands are basically playing the same shape as they were when you were playing the major shape that lived on the low E string. Why is that? Well, it's the same thing. Come down here and play your open E major chord. There's an E major chord. Very first chord I ever showed you. When telling people how to play an A minor chord, I usually explain that it's the same fingering as an E chord, since you already know that chord, except that every single finger is moved one string towards the ground. So, like this. That's probably how I taught you to do it on your A minor chord. The major shape here, when the root lives on the low E string, because it's an E major chord, that shape, when we pull everybody to the A string, the root lives on the A string, gives us a minor chord. It's the same thing because bar chords are just a reflection of open chords. If you think about it in terms of the war veteran fingering we were talking about, here's a war veteran E chord. If you pull all those fingers down towards the ground, there's your A minor chord war veteran fingering, and then that's the shape of the chord that we're going to take and start moving around the neck as a mobile chord. Here's how to play a minor shaped bar chord when the root of the chord lives on the A string. Index finger is going to mute the low E string, so it's X'd out. We've got A string, 4th fret, 1st finger, D string, 6th fret, 3rd finger, G string, 6th fret, 4th finger, B string, 5th fret, 2nd finger, high E string, barred 1st finger. And again, it's a mobile chord. You can move it around. There's D flat or C sharp minor. Here's D minor. Here's D sharp or E flat minor. E minor. So how many minor chords do you know? Well, all of them, because you can just scoot your hand around, putting that pointer finger on different root notes, and therefore you've got them all. Let's look at how to build a bar chord using a major shape when the root of the chord lives on the A string. So we're going to play a D flat major chord. There are a couple of different options we have. We've been using the example of the war veteran fingering, how we play this and then we scooch it up the neck, or here's a minor shape, scooched up the neck. This is the one time when the war veteran fingering really doesn't match, for most of us, the chord that we actually end up playing. Play your A chord, please. Like this, A major, X'd out low E string, open A, etc. You know how to play an A chord, so there you go. Now, if we did it as a war veteran, meaning losing that index finger, we would play with these 3 fingers. And then we would start scooching it up the neck. The problem is that for most people, that's an extremely hard chord to play once we start making it mobile, because the pointer finger is going to be here. Now look how bent my wrist is. When you bend your wrist too far one way or the other, that's when we start flirting with carpal tunnel. That is not good. Not good. We don't want to bend our wrist a lot, which is why most people don't feel comfortable scooching that fingering up the neck. Even though it certainly works, most of us choose not to play that. So you can choose, if you want to use the war veteran fingering that's moved up the neck. It's most of the time my female students who have their fingers are small enough to where they can fit them all. But a lot of times, I do have some males who will choose this too. It's a great way to play it. It just makes for a little bit of uncomfortable feelings and tension on your wrist. But if that's what you want to do, it's great. I'll explain it to you. So we're going to play no note on the low E string. It's X'd out, and we're muting that with the tip of the index finger. The A string, 4th fret with the 1st finger. D string, 6th fret, 2nd finger. G string, 6th fret, 3rd finger. B string, 6th fret, 4th finger. High E string, 4th fret with a barred index finger. And again, that's a mobile shape. You can move it around. So for those of you who can do the, let's call it war veteran shape, like this, I salute you. Good for you. There's a workaround, which is to use what I call the double bar, or sometimes I'll call it the mini bar, which is basically you're going to get the same notes. You're just going to use less fingers. And here it is. It's going to look kind of like a power chord. We're going to flatten out our ring finger to get this shape. So let's teach you how to play it using the double bar or mini bar. Muting the low E string with the tip of the index finger. We're going to go A string, 4th fret, index finger. D string, 4th fret with that barred 3rd finger. 6th fret of the G string with that barred 3rd finger. B string, 6th fret with the barred 3rd finger. And then we run into trouble because most of the time, if this is barred, most of us don't have bendy enough fingers to get this 4th fret of the high E string that we normally would get. So you kind of have to make a decision. Is it worth it to try to get this note and do this excruciating fingering? There it is, there's that high E string 4th fret. Or do you want to do the double bar or mini bar and get a muted note? Well, I don't want to get a muted note, Dave. I need all my notes. I would agree with you, except for the fact that that high E string 4th fret is a duplicate note. It's a redundant note. You've already played that note elsewhere in the chord, so you don't actually need that note. By the way, some of us use our ring finger to play this, or our 3rd finger. You'll often see me and some other people using our pinky finger or 4th finger to play the double bar, like this. Oh, you hear that, what I just did right there? I actually got this note. I'm glad because I just made a mistake. There's the one danger about using the double bar or mini bar fingering, is that we sometimes will get this 6th fret of the high E string. And that is not a member note of the chord. We don't want that note to ring. So you have to make sure that your finger, whether you use the ring finger or 3rd finger, is arched enough to get a dead note, or whether you're using your pinky or 4th finger. But the one thing we cannot have happen is this. That 6th fret. So to summarize, there are 3 different ways you can play the bar chord major shape when the root of the chord lives on the A string. You can choose to play it using all 4 fingers, or what I'm calling the war veteran fingering, like this. The advantage is you have that high E string, nice and ringy. Ah! The disadvantage is that for a lot of us, it makes our wrist uncomfortable. A lot of us will choose to play a different fingering than that by doing the double bar or mini bar fingering. And there are 2 ways of playing that. You can do it with your ring finger, making sure to mute that high E string unless your finger is super bendy, and then you can get that 4th fret. There it is. Or you can use your pinky to do so. Again though, mute that high E string or get the 4th fret to ring. Again, no matter what shape you choose, we don't want the 6th fret to ring. It's got to be muted or scooped to get the 4th fret.